What's up, everybody? This is going to be a long-winded ramble, so grab your popcorn, get your painting stuff ready, fire up that video game, whatever it is that you do, and just strap in, have some fun, and share your thoughts on the video after you watch the entire thing. That way you don't potentially comment on something I say later on, and hopefully you will stick through the entirety of this long-winded, almost Ramblecast-like level of ramble here, because this is going to be a big Space Marine roundup for August 2019 into September 2019 and forward, going over stuff we know, stuff that I've seen pictures of from the White Dwarf for August, and just some speculation and things thereafter. Not going to go too much into the fluff or lore aspect of things. I know in the previous ramble I talked about how Primaris basically are the next step evolution wise that GW has in mind for Imperium's Space Marine stuff. And I still believe that. Whether or not GW is going to really, pull the trigger on that anytime soon is a different story. It just makes logical sense based on the releases and what we've seen come out. At the very least, it'd be cool to see everything up to that scale. But that's a whole ramble, uh, Primaris ramble cast for the future. So I'll save that for future stuff. So just do try to keep that in mind when you comment. I'm not going to be referring to anything in that regard. Looking so far, it's not so far. Looking at stuff instead is a better way of saying it, in terms of releases, models, potential future release stuff, and so on. So, the Space Marine Codex, as I said in the previous ramble, this is basically the second edition of the Space Marine Codex for 8th edition of 40k. They haven't done something like this in a while, prior to 8th edition, I have to say, because obviously Space Marine Codex did this for 8th edition also. But prior to 8th edition, they haven't done something like this for a while. It's no big deal. And it may speak to their potential plans of longevity for 8th edition. Instead of jumping to 9th edition, if there will be a 9th edition, who knows. But yeah, so let's just have some fun and look at what we know and share thoughts. I'll share mine and share yours in the comment section. So, with that said, new units. As we know, Primaris, it's all Primaris stuff, including some Primaris-sized special characters, right? Chief Librarian Tigerius and Corsair Khan. And as we know, a whole bunch of new Primaris units, stuff from Shadow Spear getting introduced into the Codex, and some new stuff, including the Impulsor, which I really like. As I said before, basically the front half of it's like a rhino, the back half is basically all, looks like all the hover tech MacGuffins to make it float, and it just is a nice look. So, with that said, it wasn't quite clear exactly what they were referring to when they first announced the Space Marine Codex, because they said that the Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels will have access to things from the Space Marine Codex that are not in their book. And I took it to mean the new stuff coming out, Primaris, and a lot of people did, but it was also potentially stating you could take stuff you didn't have access to before ever. And in fact, there was a Warhammer community post that had a little star, a little star asterisk thing that when you look at the bottom, it talks about stuff. And there was one that they really quickly edited, because it originally talked about how, now you'd have the ability to transport your Space Wolf Dreadnoughts with a Storm Raven or whatever. And I don't believe they have access to a Storm Raven. So, it really was a case of perhaps clarification needed on their own front as well, and a bit of an error made insofar as what they were talking about. And that's kind of a big whoopsie daisies there. So, it didn't help. The fact that they removed it wasn't good and helpful, but when I first saw that, I was like, I don't know what that means in terms of what we're going to be able to take now, because the whole reason Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels have their own codex, respectively for each, is that those three codices represent forces that are divergent enough from the standard Codex Astartes to require their own Space Marine Codex. Now, you can make an argument for some of the stuff in the Space Marine Codex needing their own book, such as the Black Templars, but because they used to have one. But Space Wolves are a good example of this. They march to the beat of their own drum. They follow the Codex Astartes 0%, right? They don't even have librarians. They're ruin priests. They don't have chaplains, they're wolf priests, and so on. they have their own unique forces. They don't follow anything in regards to tactical layout. They don't have tactical squads. They have Grey Hunters. They don't have Devastators. They have Long Fangs. They do everything on their own, basically the same way they've been doing it since they were a Legion, you could say. So why on earth would they suddenly have access to Devastators? It doesn't make any sense. So, or anything else. So, and I didn't think it would be that way, but there wasn't enough of a specific call out to what we would have access to, so it made me a little bit concerned. Because I think it would really have been a disservice to these three forces to just be like, oh yeah, here's all the cool, not cool stuff, but here's all this stuff. Forget about your codex, just use what's in here, and whatever. It also been really wordy. So, the Codex Space Marines new units that they'll have access to was spelled out for us in the August 8th posting of Space Marines Preview new units. Now, that's very good. Having it spelled out really clears up any potential muddy waters. And I figured it was going to be exactly what they called out here, but it's nice to have it spelled out 100%. Also, they talk about data sheets, so that was really cool too. It's something I wasn't expecting. So, yeah, it's important to note that you don't need to own Codex Space Marines to take these units like I thought you would. And a lot of people thought, okay, we're going to have to buy a Codex and use 2 codices in a game, and it'd be kind of clunky, but it would work out, and it would have been kind of clunky. But, or definitely clunkier than what it'll be now, because now you have to have PDF either on your phone, on a tablet, print it out, or whatever. But, hey, it's still a bit more streamlined and smoother in comparison to the 2 codices. So, anyways, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels will have access to the new units from Codex Space Marines as follows: Captain in Phobos Armor, Librarian in Phobos Armor, Lieutenant in Phobos Armor, Eliminator Squad, Incursor Squad, Infiltrator Squad, Suppressor Squad, Invictor Tactical Warsuit, Impulsor, Primaris Repulsor Executioner. Those are 10 units. Interestingly enough, there is no Chaplain in Phobos Armor, and they made a model for it, so they don't have a unit for it. That being said, they also say this in this I'm going to read this paragraph verbatim from the post. The full data sheets and match play point values for each of these units will soon be available as a free PDF download for each of these chapters. Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels, just to clarify. Okay, moving on back to the actual post. So, along with the rules for the Shock Assault ability. So basically, the full data sheets and match play point values for each of these units will soon be available as a free PDF download for each of these chapters, along with the rules for the Shock Assault ability. Essentially, if you collect one of these chapters, you can still pick up Codex Space Marines for all the expanded lore, background, and aforementioned data sheets, but you don't need it to add the new units to your collection and use them in battle. Your Codex is still fully functional. This was honestly unexpected. It makes a lot of sense. It cleans it up very nicely, right? So there's no need for Codex Space Marines to have extra clunky worded verbiage paragraph stuff in the book to state, okay, these units can be taken by Codex, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels, and yada yada yada, sub out rules, because they have their own special rules, these codices. So having data sheets for each of these chapters, I'm assuming means they're going to release 3 PDF downloads, one for each of these chapters. That includes these units in there with all the nice written out, spelled out special rules for those specific chapters and so on, as well as the Shock Assault ability. Shock Assault, as we already know, I went over this in my other Space Marine Codex Ramble, and as I stated, the Death Watch and Grey Knights will also be gaining access to Shock Assault, as well as Traitor Astartes. Anything Astartes is going to have Shock Assault, so that's pretty cool. And Death Watch is called out as also gaining access to the new Primaris Repulsor Executioner, and that's it. And I call BS on that, but I understand why. It's just a case of, okay, there's 2 hands at work when it comes to figuring out what a codex might get access to and not, whether it's a PDF like this or a new book. One is the fluff lore hand. You know, does it make sense? Using Space Wolves as the example, would it make sense to give them, Devastators? No. Okay, so that's why they don't have it. Lore-wise, it makes no sense. And everything. The other hand is out-of-game reasons. Balancing, uniqueness, variety, flavor, things like that. You don't want carbon copies everywhere necessarily. You want things to have their own feel to a regard. And that's the second hand at work. And this is the hand purely at work that's keeping the new Primaris stuff away from Deathwatch, basically. Because if you give them access to absolutely everything for the new Primaris stuff for the Deathwatch book, it becomes very much a mirror image of the standard Space Marine Codex in a lot of ways, only instead of chapter tactics, you have the Deathwatch rules. And that you don't want Codex to be too same-like, right? You don't want them to be very samey, or else what's the point of even having the two books? So I get it. But Deathwatch has their own flyer. Deathwatch could at least gain access to the Impulsor as a dedicated transport option for their Primaris. I mean, come on. But the Impulsor would have been a great access thing as well. And you know, given the Eliminator squad and the Infiltrator squad, like, you know, a couple of the squads too, just enough to give them a little bit extra. Give them a PDF, that would have been great. But instead, all they're getting is the Repulsor Executioner and not even the Impulsor. So that's a little unfortunate. And it definitely feels like the only reason we're seeing this is because of that out of game, out of context, you know, purely mechanics / uniqueness and variety hand. So the best way in which you can but the best way in which decisions are made, when you look at it, you can look at it and go, okay, it not only is it a unique variety thing standpoint, but it's also a fluff thing. The hands work hand in hand together to make a choice to where it feels natural. That's the best way. And it doesn't always work out that way, but that's when I think a decision is best made, is when it feels like both hands are at work together in unison, and it feels very natural for the Force. And the Deathwatch case here, it doesn't feel that way, and that's unfortunate. So, yeah, but it is still very cool that Blood Angels, Space Wolves, and Dark Angels gain access to these units and will gain free PDF downloads, which is just the skinny, just the rules to play them, but that's great. It means you don't have to buy the Codex if you don't want to. I like to collect codices, so I will be getting this book for sure. But if all you need is the rules because you want to run the Impulsor or the Suppressor Squad or whatever, hey, you're going to get access to it for free, so you can just take your Codex, download the PDF, either print it or save it on your phone or something, have access to the rules and the Shock Assault ability rules, and go about your business. That's great. I really didn't expect that, to be honest. I don't know why I didn't, because it makes a lot of sense, and it's not like it's unheard of for GW to do something like that. But I was just thinking, okay, we'll have to buy the book. Now, however, though, this does add a little bit of an extra hurdle GW now has to overcome if they want to produce a second edition codex for these three codices. Now they have to look at it and decide what are we going to add in addition to this stuff, because only naturally are they going to put these data sheets in, right? They're going to put these data sheets in alongside the fluff and lore stuff. They're going to do it. The expanded background and lore will be added in addition to these data sheets. It just makes sense if you're going to do a new second edition of the Codex to have it all in there nice and neat. But now you have to add something else. And what are you going to add? What could they add? Because if you don't, people are going to look at it and go, well, why would I really buy that when I already have basically what you're talking about? They print out the PDF, keep it alongside their Codex, and they basically have the book without the expanded lore. So and now it really puts a pressure on them, in my opinion, to make a second edition Codex worthy of buying by adding something new, which is kind of exciting because they wouldn't have had to before, but now they kind of have put that in their corner where they have to do that, in a sense, in a matter of speaking. So with that said, unfortunately, because we're getting the Impulsor, as cool as the Impulsor is, I do have a feeling this means that we're still going to have completely arbitrary transportation rule shenanigans still happening. Deathwatch is a really good example of this. Deathwatch has a special flyer transport that Primaris cannot use because it cannot transport Primaris for no other reason than their Primaris. There is no real reason behind it at all. So, also, Land Raiders don't transport Primaris. It just can't. Primaris are artificially kept out of non-Primaris transport stuff. Now, I'm okay with them being kept out of Rhinos. They are a little bit bigger. Rhinos aren't super claustrophobically cramped necessarily, but they are designed I don't want to say sleek, but compact in mind. So okay, maybe you wouldn't be able to really fit Primaris in there effectively. Let's just say whatever. I'm okay with that. I often look at Primaris now in the same way I look at Terminators in terms of size. Primaris are naturally bigger than Standard Astartes. I don't necessarily think fluff-wise, if we saw drawings or whatnot, I don't necessarily think they would be standing taller than a Terminator, because Terminator armor is very big and bulky. So I have a feeling that they would be roughly comparable in size and square footage of space being taken up roughly. And Terminators can't go in Rhinos, so that's fine. But Terminators can go in Land Raiders. And I don't think we're going to see a change. I'd love for that to be the case because it just doesn't make sense logistically. And I feel like, yes, let's let Primaris use the flyer transports and use the Land Raider transports. Why not? Right? But again, that's the case of the artificial out of context hand, not the lore hand, but the out of the gaming rules out of game hand, weaving its magic, and you can definitely tell by the feel of it. I don't think that's changed, but at least they get the Impulsor now, so hey, that's pretty cool. Especially because the Impulsor basically has the ruling of a Land Raider for them. In essence, it's an assault vehicle, so whatever. But anyways, so that's unfortunate, but the Impulsor is still cool, so I guess that works. With that all said, what I am really looking forward to is the ability to make your own chapter. They're calling it successor tactics as opposed to chapter tactics, which makes a lot of sense. And I'm really looking forward to it in a big way because I always like the idea of building your own force up. And we had back in 4th edition for the Space Marine Codex a lot of capability to do that. It wasn't called chapter tactics or anything like that then. 5th edition introduced chapter tactics. In 4th edition, we had basically codex divergencies. And it was a little clunkier than how they're spelling it out here, because you had kind of like a pros and a con, depending upon what you took that you had to do, and all that jazz. It was a little bit more of a learning curve to it than what this sounds like it'll be, but it was still very cool. It wasn't that hard to figure out, and could lead to a lot of really fun combos. Naturally, certain combinations rose to the forefront. Certain combinations are going to be naturally more beneficial for the player base for power gaming than others, depending upon your playstyle, of course. So we're going to see natural things rise like that. We're still going to see it here, but it was still very cool. 5th edition done away with that. It really streamlined the process, introducing chapter tactics and the like, and that's where we've been ever since. But they're bringing back the ability to really build up a successor chapter, and they're calling it successor tactics. Makes sense. So the way in which this is working is you can pick any combination of 2 successor tactics from the 19 listed in the codex. So that's really interesting. There is one of which you only can choose it and nothing else, and that's Inheritors of the Primarch. So before I go into that, I want to say I'm really looking forward to this. This is a big reason why I want to pick up the codex, because I want to do another series. I like having a whole bunch of series. I know I got to work on the ones I have, but because there's no real time commitment to most of these, it's just fun to have a whole bunch to cycle through. And At-A-Glance is sticking around. I say that because it is sticking around, and I'll get to doing more of that stuff. But At-A-Glance isn't just Space Marines; it's also Xenos and Chaos. But I want to do a specifically Space Marine series, and I know Preheresy and Codices is, and yes, I got to get to that again. I know, but this is going to be for 40k. This is going to be a successor. Basically a successor tactics. Hard to say that word multiple times, apparently. Successor Tactics is going to be a series based on the Successor Tactics. And what I'm going to do in that series is look at established 40k GW official Space Marine chapters that would utilize the Space Marine Codex, and just give my thoughts on what I feel they would have successor tactics wise. So, Mentors, Celestial Lions, the Blood Ravens, and so on and so forth, if they would make use of the standard Space Marine Codex. What successor tactics do I personally feel would best represent them in their fluff? Some of them are going to be very easy, because some of them are going to basically use the Inheritors of the Primarch. Black Consoles will use that, for example. So Inheritors of the Primarch, they spell it out for us because they showcase this amongst several others. Inheritors of the Primarch is, fluff-wise, it really spells it out. So closely do this chapter's warriors cleave to the strategic doctrines of their genetic forebears that only their heraldry marks them out as unique from the first founding chapter they emulate. So if you select this successor tactic, you cannot select a second. Select one of the following chapters and use the chapter tactics of that chapter as listed. So that is of the 6 first founding guys. So Ultramarines, Imperial Fists, White Scars, Raven Guards, Salamanders, Iron Hands. Basically, this is the way you do your counts as force if you really want to. The whole reason this exists is because GW and 8th edition really set up a bit of an artificial blockade about doing counts as. As much as they want us to build our own force, that comes with a price tag, and that price tag is losing access to certain things because you're not really Ultramarines, or you're not really whatever the case may be. Insert codex here. This is the workaround for that. The official workaround for that is you take Inheritors of the Primarch, and there you go. So that's pretty cool. And I love this capability. Not Inheritors of the Primarch, the whole successor tactic idea, because I like the freedom to really kind of mold your force the way you want it for a DIY force. And don't get me wrong, Xenos have come a long way, because it always was Space Marines really had a lot of opportunity here, and the other forces kind of lacked it a little bit. But the dynastic codes for the Necrons is a great way to be able to pick one and go from there and build your own force if you so desire, as well as collecting that actual force. So forces overall have come a long way in general of having this kind of options to do stuff like this, and the more the merrier, I say. So I would love to see this idea of successor tactics start to bleed into things where it makes sense to. It wouldn't make sense in Blood Angels or Dark Angels or Space Wolves necessarily, because they represent that force, and the way their successors fight would be very similar. So it wouldn't make too much sense there, but it would make sense in Tau. It would make sense in Eldar a bit. It would make sense in Necrons a bit if they wanted to put the effort in. It's just, I guess, really easy to do it here because there's 1,000+ official Space Marine chapters and all of the countless unique DIY ones that people can make, so that have been making. By far, I think Space Marines are probably the force that gets the most DIY treatment as opposed to the other ones. But anyways, tangent. My point is, I really like this, and I want to do a series on it, like I said, and I'm really happy to see it come back. It's probably not going to have quite the intricacy that the old 4th edition way had, insofar as locking you out of certain choices. We'll have to wait and see, though. Because when I first heard about this, I thought, okay, if he takes something like a heavy armor tactic, if there's something equivalent to that, maybe it means you cannot take Infiltrator or something. I don't know, because they don't really make sense together, but it might not. So it'll be interesting to see all the different successor tactics and then what combos kind of raise to the top. And it'll be fun to look at that and do a thought ramble on how it fits into established official chapters, where it makes sense to. So, really cool to see that. Outside of that, really like the White Scars, Primaris upgrades and transfers. They're a first founding force. Any first founding force should get extra treatment, I feel, personally. And this is appropriate. It gives them extra transfers. It gives them the added details of the bits for Primaris and even non-Primaris users. The heads, the extra MacGuffin bits, and the shoulder pads can be used outside of Primaris. So it's just a really nice thing. I do like the Primaris arm bits. One's holding a trophy, or 2 trophies by their hair, and one's a chainsword that's kind of a little bit uniquely shaped, which looks cool. You can use them together or separate. It's just a really cool little added feature, in my opinion. The 2 special characters are Corsair Khan and Tigerius turned Primaris. And the one thing that a lot of people have actually pointed out, because you can literally look at them side by side, is the fact that they are not that different bitwise in terms of their legs, right? Outside of having different sculpted detail on them, the leg posing is very similar to each other, almost identical, if not identical. Maybe just a little bit wider for Tigerius, maybe not, because we can't tell because of the other bits. And this speaks to two things. A, much like the Commander box set, you can have the same exact bits, but you pose them in different ways, and it does convey a very different feel for that model. So you can take the Commander box set, build it like it's just about to charge, or you can take the Commander box set and build it like he's laying down fire. And it's going to have the same leg and torso bits, really. It's just how you organize the arm bits and the head and the torso twisting and all that that's really going to change the way it feels. So there's a lot you can do with similar bits to get vastly different feels. However, it also speaks of, really, you're going to do that to us? These are special characters. They should all have something unique to them to a degree. And I get it. It might be easy for them to do this and design it and make the molds and what have you because, hey, same leg armor, we just got to add different details on it and boom, Bob's your uncle, right? But I don't know. I can see why people are calling it out. I don't think it's as big a deal as some people make it out to be. It is a little bit, perhaps not lazy, but it could almost be called a little lazy. But it's not like it's a deal breaker or shatters the illusion or anything. They still look great. I just like to see a bit more in terms of GW with posing stuff. And Primaris in general kind of fall into that trap because they're very kind of clamshelly the entire range. So it'd always be great to get a bit more variety. So hopefully future Primaris special character models, whether they're brand new or just Rubicon Primaris sized old characters, won't all use the same leg style necessarily. Just wanted to call that out because there was a lot of attention brought to that. The two successor books, White Scars and Ultramarines, are alongside, and it's actually going to be very cool to see the Ultramarine supplements and the White Scar supplements alongside the book, as well as all the other supplements coming out. I'm really curious to see particularly what other First Founding Forces, the other four, are going to get, particularly Iron Hands, because Iron Hands, much like the Imperial Fists, had a supplemental. I always do that. Those two had supplement books back in 6th Ed and all that. So I want to see how much they take from that and then add to it. We know that there's going to be an Iron Father model for the Iron Hands, probably coming with their supplement book. So it'll be interesting to see what all is in there. Same thing with the Imperial Fist, but I'm most interested, just because out of being generally interested in the Iron Hands and Salamanders, because of the way they conduct war and all that. I'm really interested to see what their supplement books bring to the table. So, still say there should be a 7-1 for the Blood Ravens, just to give them something a bit more concrete, but I understand why there isn't at the same time. Because 6 is a lot already, so adding to that is a lot. But anyways, the second wave is where we're going to see these Primaris models come out, more or less. I don't know if all of them are coming. I do know the Invictor Tactical Warsuit's coming. The Shadow Spear characters are going to be sold by themselves as well there. A Primaris Lieutenant is going to be put up for sale with the second wave. I imagine the Impulsor, I don't know if everything Primaris model-wise is hitting in the second wave. That's a decent amount, or if they're going to have a third wave. I don't know. They haven't really called it out necessarily. But I will say this. This Invictor Tactical Warsuit deal, I get it. And what's interesting is if the fluff really is what they kind of spelled out in the preview, the Invictor Tactical Warsuit is basically a Redemptor Dreadnought chassis that has been stripped back and redesigned. Now we can tell by looking at it visually, but if the fluff is basically that concept, then I'm okay with it looking like it does, because it makes sense for it to look like a Redemptor. And if you're thinking stripping back and redesigning a Dreadnought chassis, that's craziness. That's blasphemy. Well, this is a brand new Dreadnought chassis. It's not a venerable Dreadnought chassis. It's not a Contemptor Dreadnought chassis. This is a brand new design chassis for the Primaris. So I think it makes sense. You know, it's not venerated to the point where you can't touch it, aside from keeping it up, upkeeping it. So it's a platform that can get a bit more flexibility in use and change, and I'm all on board for that. I think that makes a lot of sense. It kind of fits the Primaris nature. So I'm okay with it personally. I get why people wouldn't be okay with it, but for me, that works out fine. What I still don't like is the dumb, in my opinion, heavy sidearm pistolized heavy bolter strapped to its hip that it can draw and fire. And you can model it with it strapped to its hip, or you can model with it holding it and shooting it. This guy pilots this thing with 2 joysticks and I'm assuming pedals on the floor. and maybe a bit of a cybernetic kind of integration with his power armor and stuff, which you could use to explain away this. But still, it's kind of a very intricate movement, drawing and pull and shooting and reholstering and everything to do with joysticks and the like. It feels very cartoony to me, that actual aspect of this Invictor. Also, it doesn't feel very Imperium at all, right? Eldar, Wraith Lords, and Wraithguard can do this, and it makes sense for them. The Eldar Warsuits don't do this, but their Wraithguard and Wraith Lord do and can, and have been modeled for such, and it looks fine. It makes sense. It's basically soul possessing this construct, so why wouldn't it work like a normal big body? Tau Battlesuit, this makes sense because they're basically the Gundams of 40k. So it works out just fine. They typically have their ranged weapons strapped to their arms, but they can easily draw and fire stuff, and manipulate things. We see that with Farsight and the Dawnblade, but they could do it for other stuff as well. So hey, no harm, no foul, really. They are the anime-ish Gundam-esque force of 40k. It makes the most sense for them to be doing something like this too. It just doesn't feel very Imperium to me. Yes, we see the Dread Knight grasping stuff, as well as the cool looking yet kind of silly idea of the Venerable Dreadnought for Space Wolves, because it's holding a shield and an axe for no real good reason. But it looks cool. I mean, they did very good detail to that Dreadnought, so I kind of give it a pass. But those things are all melee weapons, not ranged weapons. So it just feels a little weird being this ranged weapon, pistolized version of a heavy bolter. For me personally, I know I've harped on this in the previous ramble. I'm doing it again here. It just is weird. If I were to build this model, I would modify that pistolized heavy bolter so it looks like it could be permanently attached to the arm somewhere, have it underslung or something, and just do it that way. And then, if it was just that from the get-go, I'd be a-okay with it. It just feels really odd to me, especially because you have the right arm being a ranged weapon arm like you would normally expect, and you have on either side of the torso fixed mounted ranged weapons. So why would you have out of nowhere this pistolized heavy bolter being strapped to the hip like a pistol when you have those three ranged weapons and the thing on top of the torso, the missile launcher, rocket launcher thing on top of the torso, all being very normal, what you expect Imperium style weapons to be, and then this random pistol heavy bolter just felt a little weird to me. Anyways, it is cool, I guess you could say, to see it modeled, holding it, so you can model it either way you want. I just still find it very just weird. So I would modify it personally, like I said, but that's just me. Anyways, harped on that long enough. So, with all of that said, looking towards the future, very long-winded here, we see September is the month that we're going to see Dark Angel stuff. According to some pictures I've seen for the White Dwarf of August, it calls out, what's it called? The September being Primaris Dark Angels, as well as some other stuff, and it makes me wonder what that means. So for the other stuff, which is very cool, the transfer sheets are coming back. If you remember, I don't know if you do it, it depends if you were around, years ago, they introduced transfer sheets such as Angels of Vengeance and other successors for different forces. And I don't know if the Raven Guard and Iron Hands got one then too. They're getting one apparently now, next month or so. But either way, introduced a bunch of decal sheets for forces that didn't normally have it. And it was glorious because if you didn't want to freehand it or couldn't, and you couldn't find a good proxy for it or whatever, now you could collect a force, have all the decals you need, and have it really look and come into its own. And I have an Angels of Vengeance transfer sheet, and I do plan to get more. And it's just really cool to see. I hope these stick around. It was a limited run thing last time, not like numbers, just after like a couple of months or so it went away. I would love for that to stick around because it just makes sense. And we're going to see stuff for Iron Hands and Raven Guard as well. And I think any first founding force should have decals, so those should definitely stick around. But it's just cool to see that as well. So that's one of the stuff we're going to see coming soon, I believe, or at least talked about soon, and I'm looking forward to that. The bit of mystery that I want to end on is the Dark Angels Primaris stuff. It calls out specifically Primaris Dark Angels. What that means, I don't know. I don't think we're going to get a whole new special unit just for the Dark Angels. Maybe it means one of their special characters is getting the Primaris treatment. It's probably going to be Azrael or Ezekiel. I don't think they'll do Asmodai due to his fanatical nature, although they could for that same reason. And Belial and Samael won't happen because of their unique war gear situation, which has no bearing with Primaris at the moment anyway. So it could be one of the special characters that we know getting Primaris treatment. It could be a whole new Primaris special character. And because it says Primaris Dark Angels, you could take that to mean plural as well if you wanted to. So maybe a whole new unit for them. Whatever the case is, the big question that comes to mind is Codex ? Because if they are going to do one so soon, what are they going to do? Are they going to just tidy up the datasheet and the Dark Angel Codex into one reprint and that's it? That'd be really kind of disappointing. Are they going to introduce a new Primaris datasheet for us, Dark Angel players? And what would it be and why? Who knows? And of course, every time a force that has a Primarch confirmed still alive but missing gets mentioned, their Primarch gets mentioned. I don't think the Lion is coming like this out of nowhere. Of the ones mentioned, it is one of several that would be easy enough to kind of just drop out of nowhere, out of the blue, have it show up. But I think they have some build-up, and who knows, maybe this is the beginning of the build-up, I don't know. But they're calling out specifically Primaris stuff first, so we'll have to wait and see more information on that. If I'm going to forecast, I think that we're going to see a Primaris special character. Now, I would love to see a brand new special character this come to the Dark Angels force as a Primaris dude. Like a company master or something. But I don't know if that's going to happen. It would be cool if it does, but I think the whole Rubicon Primaris thing where you take a stand in a space marine and turn him into Primaris is much more likely. We saw it with Marneus Calgar being the first. We saw it with Tigerius and Corsair Khan. And it's been talked about in the fluff in general. So I'm thinking that's probably more likely. As far as Codex stuff goes, very well could be, but we would need more than just a new stat line for a special character and all the stuff we get a free PDF for. And that might be where we get this new, potentially new Primaris Dark Angels unit coming. Who knows? It is a bit odd, though. We have 4 more supplement books to go for the Space Marine Codex. And you don't want to pull a Black Library or a Forge World where you really string these out over a period of long time. So I would think we would see those 4 happen sooner rather than later, or even happen before we get something new Codex-wise for the Dark Angels, Blood Angels, or Space Wolves. In this case, we're talking Dark Angels. It could happen at the same time. It just feels a bit odd if it was to do so. So, who knows? It could just be, hey, these kits are getting Dark Angel bits in them as well. You know, because the way it works now is you can get, for example, the Aggressor kit or the Intercessor kit or whatever, or the Hellblaster kit normally, or you can buy it as a Dark Angel Intercessor kit, and all it includes is a Dark Angel upgrade sprue alongside the kit. I don't know if that's what they're talking about. We'll have to see. I just don't think necessarily it's going to... Now, it has the potential to be something kind of like a big update for the Dark Angels, but also could just be simply repackaging the kits or whatever, and then we'll see October as Blood Angels or something, and so on down the line in the same regard. I don't know, though. We'll have to see. My hope is that if it's anything, it is going to... anything Codex-wise, that we do get more than just a datasheet included in a Primaris special character. Something new is I think, in order for sure. And that would help move forward the fluff of Dark Angels, Primaris relations, and see how that goes. Anyways, that's basically it for this very long-winded Space Marine Roundup. The Space Marine Codex is coming. Successor chapter stuff, successor tactics and the like. Very cool. Looking forward to delving into that. The models, by and large, are pretty interesting. The Invictor's got a little bit of silly stuff going on, but overall I'm okay with it, I guess. And by and large, it's really curious to see what these supplement books are going to be like in terms of being released, because I wouldn't want it to take a full year for Salamanders for some or whatever else to get their supplement book, right? I feel like it should happen in the next month or so, and that would kind of flood the market, sure, with Space Marine stuff, but I think that's a better alternative than just stringing it out for a long period of time. Like, why should the Imperial Fist or the Salamanders or whomever wait half a year when White Scars got theirs at launch, right? For example, so we'll have to see. Anyways, that's it. Share your thoughts to this very long-winded ramble. I warned you in the beginning. I'm going to have it in the title, warning long-winded. But just, if you went through this, bravo. Share your thoughts and hit that subscribe button. Be part of future conversations like this and stuff that is much shorter. So until next time, take it easy.